That's not static, it's a death sentence. The signal died in her ear clean. Final. Former USMC Major Lara Cade, now CIA Tactical Liaison, stood alone in the heart of Corridor 9, a dead borderland carved between three hostile nations. The air itself felt wired, waiting for something to break. Deep cover surveillance on illegal arms routes, that was her mission. Listen, observe, report, not intervene. Her HK-416A5 rested close across her chest, dust-worn and loyal. 8 mags, 4 days' hope, and one slim thread of extraction if the MH-60M Blackhawk ever circled back. Each breath tasted of rust and static. She moved through the bones of a forgotten checkpoint, boots whispering over wire and corroded brass. Years of training had taught her how to vanish, but even ghosts could feel when the air turned predatory. The interference wasn't random. It was precision jamming, deliberate, surgical. Out here, that meant one name. The Scythe Collective ex-PMC enforcers turned border predators, men who made disappearances look like sandstorms. Someone knew she was listening, and they wanted her deaf. Through her ACOG 4X scope, movement shimmered in the dunes, 22 civilians staggering through the heat, mothers clutching children, old men bent beneath fear, refugees fleeing the Tri-Junction conflict, forgotten by every flag that claimed to protect them. They were walking straight into the kill zone she'd mapped 2 days earlier. HQ had frozen all overt contact 48 hours ago, until the jammers cut command out, and the choice became hers. Orders said nothing. Instinct said everything. And then her father's voice surfaced from another Life Gunnery Sergeant Raoul Bull Cade. Honor isn't about surviving orders. It's about saving lives when no one's watching. Lara exhaled, clicked the safety off, and stepped from the ruins, voice cutting across the heat. Stop armed men ahead if you keep moving. You die. The refugees froze, a heartbeat, then a glint from the ridge, sunlight, glass, a scope. Cade dove behind a concrete slab, pulse pounding, mind already computing range and wind. The desert seemed to sharpen around her, every grain electric. Mission compromised, orders broken, morality engaged. And somewhere beyond those dunes. The Scythe Collective adjusted their sights because tonight, the hunter had just found something new worth killing. You're watching a declassified operation file from Corridor 9. If this kind of storytelling hits you, subscribe. Soldier. More classified missions unlock every week. The desert didn't sleep, it watched. Former Major Lara Cade led 22 civilians west, deeper into the emptiness. The air shimmered like liquid glass, the heat biting through fabric and hope alike. They had no reason to trust her, only desperation. And desperation makes faith easy. Her movement was rhythm scan. Move, pause, cover. HK-406A5 steady against her shoulder, selector on semi for precision. Every sound mattered. Every silence was a countdown. They'd covered barely 3 kilometers when instinct, that old sixth sense sharpened by years in dust and fire, crawled up her spine. Cade dropped to a knee, raised her binoculars. 6 silhouettes ghosted along the ridge, clean spacing, professional discipline, rifles low but ready. The Scythe Collective. They weren't patrolling, they were tracking. She motioned the civilians down into the sand's broken folds. Then a sound too small to be ignored. A child's sob. Human. Fragile. Fatal. Through her ACOG, Cade saw the lead mercenary halt mid-step. Head turning. A single gesture advance. Cade's mind ran the math. 270 meters. Left wind. 2 knots. No cover, no retreat, no time. She exhaled once. Slow let fear narrow her focus. 3 controlled singles. The first man folded before the echo found him. 2 more followed luck or muscle memory. She couldn't tell anymore. Precision born from adrenaline. Not calm. The survivors panicked, spraying wildfire across the ridge. Tracer arcs tore the heat, clawing inches from her position. Cade rolled sideways, shifted, fired again short. Sharp bursts, no waste, no hesitation, just survival on autopilot. Then stillness. 6 men down, 18 rounds spent. The smell of burned powder lingered like truth. She reloaded, half a mag gone 7 full left. Her breath slowed. Her hands didn't shake. Behind her, 22 faces stared awe, confusion, belief stitched into silence. They didn't know her name, but they knew what she'd just done for them. That was enough. Cade scanned the horizon, a subtle shimmer of dust in the distance. Heavier movement, wider formation. She muttered under her breath, almost amused. They're not hunting refugees anymore. They're hunting me. For a long moment, she just watched the horizon burn, not with fear, with focus. Because when the enemy changes its aim, you've already changed the war. Night doesn't hide you in Corridor 9, it hunts with you. The sun bled out behind the dunes, painting the horizon in rust and silence. Darkness didn't fall here. It advanced slow, methodical, predatory. Former Major Lara Cade crouched behind a ridge of shattered rock. Around her, 22 civilians pressed together, breathing too loudly, hoping the dark meant safety. 6 mercenaries were dead before dusk. 12 more were moving now, hunting by night. The Scythe Collective didn't retreat. They recalculated. Cade studied the terrain, a map of survival drawn in sand and fear. Then she saw it, a natural basin ringed by cliffs, narrow entries, elevated angles, perfect for defense, or dying well. Move, she whispered. Stay low. They obeyed. Desperation had become discipline, while the civilians rested. Cade worked, with stones and knife lines in the sand. She built geometry out of hope fire lanes, fallback routes, shadowed corridors where she could make the math hurt. When she finished, the place didn't look like a grave. It looked like a plan. The wind turned metallic. The night vibrated with static energy. Cade slipped on her ANPVS-14. The world flared to green fire. Every sound spoke the click of a sling, the thud of a heartbeat, the desert holding its breath. Then movement. 12 figures. 2 teams, advancing with surgical discipline, suppressed rifles, infrared strobes pulsing like veins in the dark. A support gun truck on the ridge flashed tracers, their only mistake. Cade waited until they were inside 100 meters. Safety off. Rifle steady. Her first shots split the quiet, precise. Cold. Decisive. 2 bodies folded before the rest knew they were dead. She shifted positions between bursts, using fear as cover. Tracer fire raked the rocks overhead. 1 round grazed her shoulder heat. Pain. Reality. She didn't curse. She aligned. Minutes later, silence. 12 bodies cooling in the sand. The civilians hadn't made a sound. Cade checked her load, 5 mags left. 2 partials. Time bleeding as fast as ammo. The teenage translator crept closer. Voice shaking. Were you afraid? Cade looked at him, eyes ghost pale in the NV glow. You don't lose fear, she said quietly. You just teach it where to point. He nodded, half understanding, all faith. Above them, lightning bloomed along the cloud edge, an ion storm rolling in from the north. Somewhere upwind, a low-flying jammer drone lost control and dropped from the sky. The interference began to fade, spectrum clearing in ragged bands. Then her comm hissed alive, a signal faint. Alien. Not Scythe encryption, not friendly either. And in that breath between static and silence, Lara Cade understood she wasn't the only predator in Corridor 9 anymore. They weren't rescuers. They were ghosts, and they were hunting one of their own. The sand trembled, first faint, rhythmic, deliberate, rotor blades. Lara Cade froze, tilting her head to the wind. That wasn't the ragged chop of militia birds. This was tighter, controlled, military, through her NVG. The night fractured a black silhouette cutting across the stars. MH-60M Black Hawk, running dark, low, precise. Her pulse jumped once, then steadied. She knew that sound. But in Corridor 9, even American steel could carry ghosts. Extraction. Unlikely. No comms, no link. But 3 days ago, before the storm and the blackout, she'd sent a short-burst beacon into static. Maybe someone had heard the whisper. 50 miles west, Lieutenant Commander Jack Rains' Task Group Viper 1. DEVGRU led under JSOC control leaned over a thermal feed glowing orange on his HUD. 20-plus civilians, one armed contact on Overwatch, his ops sergeant reported. Senior Chief Vega frowned. That ping matches the last CIA burst before comms went dead. Rains' voice cut through the hum. Then our ghosts still breathing. Saddle up. They flew in under thermal silence, 160th birds, clean and fast. Back in the dunes, Cade swept her ACOG across the horizon, 12 figures closing in. Disciplined spacing, precise movement. Not militia, not Scythe. Operators, her kind. She whispered to the civilians, "Stay down." No sound. Then she moved toward higher ground, rifle low, heart steady. Through her scope, she watched them advance, no hesitation, no wasted motion. Professionals. Then chaos. Gunfire from the East Ridge shredded the night, red tracers arching low. Scythe reinforcements, 2 12-man elements and a gun truck closing fast. Cade's rifle answered first, sharp, surgical. The rhythm of instinct. Viper split formation instantly, returning fire with suppressed precision. The desert erupted, 2 doctrines colliding, both built for perfection. No wasted rounds, no mercy. Minutes later, stillness, smoke, blood, cordite. The ridge fell silent except for the rotor hum approaching low. Rains approached through the haze, rifle down, voice steady. Major Cade. She nodded once. "You're late?" Rains almost smiled. "We came to pull out a stranded analyst." Cade's reply was dry. "Guess the analyst didn't read her own report wrong after all." He scanned the defensive lines she'd drawn geometry cut into sand. 30-plus confirmed. He muttered. "Reinforcements from the East Ridge. 22 civilians alive. CIA said you were intel." Cade's tone stayed calm. Intel doesn't mean harmless. Before Rains could answer, Cade's comms crackled, HQ breaking through at last. "Viper, abort extraction. Cross-border incursion flagged airspace red for 10 minutes. Rains froze. Cade reloaded automatically. Gaze fixed east. The storm above peeled apart the interference. Thunder rolled like distant artillery. 10 minutes. She murmured. "We hold till green." Rains nodded. "Copy that." for the first time in days. She wasn't alone. But in Corridor 9 being found never meant being safe. When the mission ends, what's left isn't the battle, it's the choice you made. Dawn crawled over Corridor 9, painting the dunes in molten gold. Smoke still rose from the basin below the place where silence had learned to scream. It had been 4 days since signal lost. 4 days since one woman turned orders into defiance and defiance into survival. Former Major Lara Cade stood on the ridge, HK-416 slung low, barrel blackened, bandage dark against her shoulder. Not wounded, just reminded she was still alive. Below, Task Group Viper swept the landing zone clear. 22 civilians waited by the beacon hollow-eyed, but breathing. Cade watched them in silence, exhaustion and purpose braided together behind her calm. Lieutenant Commander Jack Rains approached, helmet under his arm, voice rough with fatigue. Airspace just cleared. Command flipped it back to Amber Extraction's back on. Cade gave a faint smile. Funny how orders always catch up after the hard part's done. The MH-60M Blackhawk swept low, rotor wash scattering sand and ghosts alike. Rains scanned the basin-burned brass, blood-darkened stone, and a geometry that spoke of intent. Counts later put the enemy losses north of 30, he murmured. 22 civilians out, 0 friendly KIA. Command said you were intel. Cade's gaze stayed on the horizon. Intel doesn't mean invisible. Rains nodded once. No, it means unstoppable. Before boarding, the oldest refugee, a man with a torn scarf and eyes older than the desert, stepped forward. You were the light in a place with no sun, he said softly. My people will remember your name. Cade said nothing. She just rested a gloved hand on his shoulder, steady. Human. Enough. As the Blackhawk lifted off. Sunlight caught her rifle turning black steel to gold. The rotors thundered, and the war shrank beneath her just dust. Distance. And memory. Rains keyed his comms. Command, extraction complete. Field report logged, commendation attached. Static answered. Bureaucracy doesn't honor ghosts, but soldiers do. Hours later, at the forward base, Cade stood alone at the desert's edge. No rotors, no gunfire, just wind. She closed her eyes, heard that old sound again. Static. But this time, it wasn't silence, it was peace. She slung her rifle and walked toward the rising sun. Because true warriors don't fight for glory, they fight for those who can't.